Layers of ignorance. All there is experiencing. It's pure and perfect. Something interesting happens in the experiencing appearance of a mind, the universal mind, organizer of all experiences. Mind starts building structures, knowledge. The self finds itself surrounded by structures. Structures hide the what is or presence, and instead self gets a view that is made up, artificial. This view is nothing but knowing, knowledge itself. Mind presents that knowledge incrementally. While the structures are still forming, the knowledge appears incomplete and is seen as ignorance. It takes more experiences to complete the knowledge, which is done, but not before incomplete knowledge does its job of causing suffering. This incomplete knowledge is ignorance. In essence, knowledge is ignorance. Mind is limited. It brings an immense amount of knowledge. Still, it remains incomplete. For a human mind, which is a part of the universal mind, this situation is even worse. Humans spend their whole lives or lives under the spell of ignorance. Well, most of them do. Origin and end. How does ignorance start? This is a frequently asked question. In view of the above, it starts as soon as the knowledge gathering starts. And when does knowledge starts? It starts as soon as experiencing itself starts, which starts organization of experiences via the fundamental process. And when does that start? Well, you can see where this is going. We quickly hit a wall here and encounter something that is unknowable. Why is it? Because we are trying to apply the concept of time where it cannot be applied. Mind itself creates time. It cannot be applied to before mind or beyond mind. So, the word start loses its meaning. Masters would tell you that ignorance is as ancient as self itself, which is infinitely old. This answer is metaphorical because self is beyond time, or the idea of time does not apply to the self. Experiencing is beyond time too. It is change which does not happen in time. So, all we can say is ignorance is knowledge. Why does all knowing self get into ignorance? Why does it even allow it? Self is not ignorant, mind is. Universal mind, and mind creates knowledge and hence also creates ignorance. Self does not allow it, nor it disallow it. It merely witnesses the play. It has no interest and is also highly interested. You will find mystical speak here and paradoxes. Yes, that's normal. And we can see that it's exactly like that. When does ignorance end? Now this one is a more useful question. It ends as soon as knowledge is completed. The completion involves realization that everything is self. This dissolves all ignorance instantly and the mind is freed, ending suffering. A happy ending. How to end ignorance? It is simple. Realize who you are as an individual. When the mind knows that it is nothing but an illusion in self, ignorance ends. It cannot be done via reading about it or by hearing it from a master. It can happen only via direct experience. Why? Because as we know surely now, only experience creates knowledge. The direct experience of self completes the knowledge. How to get that experience? Strangely, you cannot get it. It happens when the time is right. I call it ripping. Some people may call it grace. A person has no control over anything, as we have seen before, and has no control over when his mind completes the knowledge. A person is only an illusion. Ripping happens, grace happens, and experience of self happens. It can be triggered by a book, teachings, just some words that remind you of self, some other experience, can arrive via practice, by introspection, by meditation, energetic manipulations, drugs, or perhaps by intervention from universal mind itself. Note, the similarities with Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, I am obviously inspired by him, but it can be shown that he is more or less right by various accounts. Can the ripping be quickened? I don't know. Try it. Who knows? It may work. Masters would say that if you are fortunate enough to encounter a teaching about the self by any happening whatsoever, you are already going through ripping. In other words, just knowing that such possibility exists is a sign of grace. So, if you are reading this, be sure that you are under the wings, so to speak. Once the ripping is complete, you will be free. There is no harm in asking for more grace, more ripness. It may work or may not work. Reading about self, singing its praises, being with wise, attending meetings that discuss it, practices that focus on mind, body, and energies are said to quicken it. Sometimes, just presence of a master is enough. But, as usual, we cannot say if the knowledge is caused by such acts, or it merely happens irrespective of these acts to get it. See the chapter on efforts, for example. Layers of ignorance. If you are under the grace, self-inquiry or introspection is the fastest way to get there. Is it a guaranteed way? No. We control nothing, remember that. Once we start questioning, which is essentially what path of knowledge is, we begin dismantling ignorance actively. Who is acting? No one. Again, this should be noted. The ignorance is removed in the reverse order of its accumulation. So, we go from outer to inner layers progressively. It's of utmost importance to note that we do not destroy the structures that cause ignorance. We merely see past them. In other words, we do not destroy the incomplete knowledge. We just complete it. So, removal of ignorance is a process of gaining more knowledge. The following is my understanding of layers. It matches my own experience. Some of you may find more or less of them. It doesn't matter. First, inert matter is the first layer of ignorance. Inert matter, which is not really inert, but shows incessant activity in a structure in the universal mind, and hence is knowledge. One can say that associated ignorance is huge. It's just gas, crystals, and rocks. Self thinks it's inert, rigid, bound in tight laws. All it sees is highly organized matter, which is itself. There is nothing there to remind that self of what it is. Self itself is inert and sleeping. Well, some metaphors there, but you get the picture. Can there be more layers that are worse than inert matter? Who knows? All we can experience is inert matter. There is nothing more inert than that, but the possibility remains open. Perhaps a matter which is even less active in some other universe. I'm going to ignore non-physical stuff because it may not be in experience of many. Second, active matter is highly energized matter such as reactive chemicals, example fire, or radioactive elements, sun, water, some planets, etc. are active but are still tightly bound by mechanical laws. Laws mean organization and hence knowledge. Self thinks it's nothing but such activity. Here and in layer 1, there is no possibility for mind to know anything else. It's utterly and completely ignorant if you consider only these two layers. Third, living matter, which is just plain matter but with some interesting and complex organization, is the third layer. DNA, unicellular organisms, plants, fungi, etc., are structures of matter that grow, replicate, and act in complex ways. They are mechanical and chemical, still bound by laws, but have a tiny bit of freedom. Self thinks its life, it's engaged in a play of germination, growth, reproduction, and decay back to inert matter. It's engrossed in it. Here also, there is no hope for minds to know anything more, but we see immense amount of organization, much more than active matter is. A huge variety of actions and forms. It simply means more knowledge. Fourth, rudimentary mind. Our fourth layer, where there is ingrained learning, genetic, basic memory, and survival instincts. Insects, fish, and reptiles have such mind, also called reptilian minds. They have much more knowledge and perceive more than mere living matter, and have intricate bodies of living matter to play with. It's captivating experience for self. Again, such mind has no potential to know anything more than what is already hard coded. I can safely put machines at this level as they currently are in 2017. Fifth, animal minds are fifth. They have even more knowledge, learning ability, emotions, rudimentary ego, and even some intelligence. Apes, mammals, and birds are in this layer. Self is engaged in a survival game here, completely unaware of itself. That's a metaphor as usual. Minds and brains are highly evolved here, but still they have no possibility of completing the knowledge. They lack self-reflection, or, in other words, animal minds lack the capability to know the self. This is somewhat debatable, and some of you may say that there is some potential here. It is okay if that is your experience. Some people may opine that creatures with a vertebral column or spinal cord are well equipped to know their self. I leave it to you, but know that they are on a brink. They can get that potential anytime. Things evolve, they don't stay same. Sixth, human minds are the sixth on the layers of ignorance. We are self-aware, Homo sapiens, and it simply means we are capable of knowing that which no other creatures can know, the self. So now you know why a human birth is considered most precise of all births. It is special. Human mind can reflect deeply, express, and learn effectively, and has higher cognitive functions to override the lower, more ignorant ones. Teachers, teachings, transfer of knowledge, and students appear at this level. This is a miracle. Our pretty bodies with opposing thumbs and notoriously agile vocal cord makes it so simple to survive and leave a lot of time for self-reflection. So, humans have the needed potential to complete the knowledge. But wait a minute. Why do only a handful of billions of us know the self? Aren't we all the same Homo sapiens? Unfortunately, not all are created equal. We are on a different sublayer, ranging from totally ignorant animal-like to totally liberated and enlightened kind. All shades of awakening are in between. The reason is ego, which we had discussed in no certain depth. The ignorant part of the human mind dominates most of us, and higher intellect is rarely seen. We have devoted many chapters for study of extraordinary capabilities of the mind, so you already know how awesome it is. And we have devoted many chapters on afflictions of the mind, so you know what a mess it is. That's another reason no one is same. There is varying amount of ignorance in humankind. Fortunately, this is changing, as it must, and the possibility of knowledge is increasing day by day. So not only the completion of knowledge is a natural process, we humans have devised clever ways to get there quickly. In other words, we try to quicken our evolution by intention and efforts. The funny thing is, if you ask anyone, even the most retarded person, if he is aware and if he is aware of being aware, you will most probably get an yes, which means human are already there. Very little needs to be done. However, self is engrossed in egoic stuff for some reason. It doesn't let go of it easily and ego fights back. It has a mind of its own. So, people would say yes, but then blankly stare at you as if asking what's the big deal. Seventh, parahuman minds are seventh. Now, what kind of bird is that? They are also known as angelic minds, non-physical beings or devas. Just as we humans possess a physical body, these minds possess a non-physical one, which in their view is as physical as it can be. We are in a wo-wo territory now. Those who have direct experience will agree and others will simply laugh. So, it's perfectly okay if you think I lost it all here and it's time to close this page. You are sane and intelligent. I would do exactly that. However, as I said, your experience may differ. You may find no evidence of a particular layer, which is fine. I am on borderline here and I am including these things only speculatively. Going into even more speculation, it is said that parahumans have such a grand mind that they have conquered suffering. They live a heavenly existence. They have everything and can create everything on will. Bill Gates is peanuts compared to them. Well, that was a joke, but you get the picture. There is no motivation for them to remember who they are. For us humans, suffering and bondage is a great motivation. It's a blessing. Nothing works faster than a combination of carrots and sticks. Parahumans have only carrots, but I guess they can complete the knowledge in an eye blink just by intention. They already know what self is, but they are not very interested. Self is enjoying heavenly pleasure here. It is also not interested. Eighth, Rishis or Buddhas are one of the eighth layer and it would be stupidity to call them ignorant. It is a thin layer, almost non-existent. Only thing is, these minds still experience individuality if they choose to. They are liberated and can take any form, from inert matter to human to devas. They can create and maintain whole universes, since they are already enlightened and liberated. There is no proper ignorance here, except the self is engaged in a grand game of creation. There are tiny vrittis, desires, and that's all there is. Just nominal ignorance. How do I know that? I don't. If I knew, I wouldn't be here writing this book. Can there be more layers between 7th and 8th, like differently awakened beings? Who knows? I can cook up some, but probably that will be too much for you to swallow. 9th, universal mind is the 9th layer. Now this one, I'm not cooking it up. It is by necessity. Fundamental process creates one thing and one thing only, which is this universal mind. It contains everything else from rishis to atoms. It is one, no duals here and no individuality, just pure knowledge. It is now familiar Ishwar, the creator according to the ancients. This makes religious people very happy. I don't mean to destroy their beliefs, but it is not an ordinary entity with super duper human powers. It is just a vast, almost infinite collection of structures. Our puny human minds cannot comprehend what it is. That said, it has ignorance. That's a surprise. But remember that wherever there is structure, there is knowledge and ignorance. Universal mind is still dwells in duality. Even if it itself is one, it still divides. The first division it creates is that of experience and an experiencer. Just like we human minds do. Anyhow, the ignorance is almost nil. It always knows it is self. I cannot say anything more about it accept that it has some fundamental limitations. Those of you who knows it via direct experience will conquer. So, it is obvious now that when the ignorance is removed, our mind resembles universal mind. It does not become yet another universal mind, it simply merges with it. The ignorance is like barriers which prevent us from seeing what we are, and its removal is like breaking those barriers. At this stage, we not only know the what of self, but also how, why, when, and where of it all. So, this is how, in my limited, uninformed view, the mind completes its journey to self. It should be obvious that there are no fixed laws here. It may or may not happen in that order, but there are general predictable patterns. For example, inert matters cannot jump to a Buddha. It has to evolve towards it. These are tiny steps, but once in a while, there happens a big leap. If you are on a path, just knowing this landscape eases everything. One can destroy all ignorance in one single blow if one wants to, and if conditions are correct, remember that you can quicken it if possible, but there is no hurry. You are already the self. Thank you.